Welcome to Libtards and Shy. Here, we discuss liberalism and what's stopping its progress, all while drinking way too much Arabic tea, which is called Shy. So, come on in. Okay, it's the summer of 1978, in the year of our Lord.
Whose Lord you talking about, buddy? Me and you do not have the same Lord.
No, we don't have the same Lord.
For starters, you have a Lord.
Yes, and his name is Harry Styles.
Okay, then we do have the same Lord.
We do have the same Lord, yes. Yeah. It's the summer of 1978, and basically the property taxes, the reassessment for the property taxes in the state of California come back to the homeowners, and homeowners in California are sick and tired. They've had it. There's too much fluctuation. And somebody who captivates the political energy of this outrage is a guy named Howard Jarvis. And Howard Jarvis...
He sounds delicious.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like just a sweet cookie of racism.
Yeah. If Harry Styles is the mountain, I feel like he's the valley you have to fall into off the mountain.
Yes. That's wow.
Yeah.
That is a great analogy.
Pulled that right out of my ass.
Damn. That's masterful.
Yeah.
All right, let's just end the podcast. We're done.
Yeah, we're
done.
done.
This is peak creativity.
Yeah. And good night. Howard Jarvis is ugly.
Yes. Now, Howard Jarvis didn't really run a race campaign that say few shit about crime in a very, dog whistly way, but...
Yeah, but it's like, let's stop crime is like white people for like, get black people out of my neighborhood.
Right. But the thing he really ran on, he kind of ran as, first of all, he's a multimillionaire retired business owner. He's like 75 at the time of the passing. And he basically ran on the idea that the taxpayer needs to reclaim his power and tell these corrupt politicians to stop taxing the hell out of our land. And it worked. Overwhelmingly, I think it was like 68 to 70% of California voters, which again, most of those voters are homeowners, voted to pass Proposition 13. Proposition 13 is, for the states who don't have this, propositions are when people are able to sign signatures to put a law directly onto the ballot and vote on that law directly.
And then become an amendment to the California Constitution.
Kind of weird. Or a law.
So or a law,
yeah. You can have a proposition or a constitutional amendment proposition.
Yeah.
And this thing was voted on, and it is single-handedly the largest, most influential ballot initiative in the history of California since the progressive movement that founded this type of legal apparatus. And the famous line from Howard Jarvis is, "We, the people, not the politicians, are still the bosses." And he said that in his victory speech, and it was all over the national news, and the conservative media ate it up. And remember, this is 1978. This is before Reaganomics. This is before the era of deregulation begins. This is kind of the beginning of the end of the New Deal's liberal run.
Yeah, this is the pre-cum to the facial of conservative.
Exactly.
Fuckery.
God, you're on top of it
I'm
today.
I'm caffeinated. I'm
Simply put, Prop 13 is not really the main story. It's, I would say, one of two of the major pillars that we're going to talk about. Prop 13 basically is a law in which it limits the amount of increase your property tax can have to 1%.
1.5, I thought.
I think it's 1%, but let's check. Yep, it's 1%. So basically we have Prop 13 limiting the amount of how the property tax can go up. And so in California, let's say you bought a house in 1978 in a very small, undeveloped region of California called Palo Alto.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in 1978, I think the price of a house was like a handful of almonds.
Yes.
And a kiss on the cheek from your grandma.
Right. I'm being very generous here when I say this is a $200,000 home.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you it was not that much. Let's just say it was.
Yeah.
All right. That home is now worth $2 million.
Minimum.
Okay.
Fucking
that is
minimum.
That is a logarithmic increase. But in 50 years, it would have only increased by 50%. So basically, the value of the home, you're not actually getting enough money from the property. Basically, the property tax, by factors of 10 plus, has been cut. And so the reason I'm mentioning Prop 13 is because Prop 13 cut the California budget like crazy. And now we're going to talk about the main issue, which is schooling. And we're going to use California as the main case for liberal failure in this department.
Because we live
for
here.
democratic failure in this department, and the reason for that, I mean, it's pretty obvious.
One, because we live here. Two, because it's a great fucking example of failure.
Oh, 100%.
It's phenomenal. Even if I was in Washington, I'd be like, no, we should pick on California.
Yeah.
Fuck those coastal elite tarts. Assholes, whatever.
Assholes.
Whatever derogatory term you want to use as we...
Against us, yes. There is a factor of money being cut. That's one thing. And by the way, when Prop 13 passed, it was not like schools were well funded. Okay? They weren't. The only difference is there was a lot more funding back then, and then when Prop 13 passed, there was a huge, huge cut. So in essence, there is really a conversation to be had about why public schooling in America sucks. And we say it sucks, and a lot of people like to say it sucks, but we have to actually cite real evidence. And one of the major things that pushed for Common Core, one of the major things that pushed for No Child Left Behind in the early 2000s was these international tests, like the National Assessment of Education Progress. And we started taking them in 1995, and we did awful. Compared to all other first world countries.
Yeah, we got bodied.
In science and reading, we are basically average. And that's not just among first world countries. That is average in all of the 80 or so countries that tested in this, including some countries that, I mean, are like, honestly, barely countries. Like, I mean, Lebanon or Trinidad and Tobago, or,
yeah, they can't even pick a name, and they read better than us.
And like Kosovo, which I mean, like, I'm not. I have nothing against these people. I mean, I'm Arab. I'm talking about these are countries that are, near failed states or failed states.
They're not considered first world countries.
No,
there's no
by
reasons
any
why
means.
our reading should be on the same fucking level.
Right, and for most of these countries, we are better than them. All right, but I'm talking about when we include the average.
Yeah, in terms of like number of McDonald's.
Right, we are basically on the bottom of the first world. And we're bothering these developing nations who are struggling to get water to their citizens. But basically, any developed country, we are basically getting bodied. And some countries in like math, it is embarrassing. Like in mathematics, right now, the average American student scores only 10 points on the standard scale higher than a student from Kazakhstan. Like Borat can do as much math.
That's insane.
Like, yeah, like, that country that like
batshit
number one in potassium and pubis, like this is the same country.
They need to be good at math though. They need to like count the seconds between when the bombs drop.
Right.
So they're like,
right, from Soviet invasion.
Yeah. They're like, we have 90 seconds.
Before Bush comes back, we are only as good as the Americans.
Yeah.
We basically the only thing regarding education that we lead the world in is in school shootings. But other than that,
hey,
number one,
hey.
In science, I think we're 23rd.
That might come back to bite us if we drop this, because literally we could drop this on like a Tuesday, and then there could be a school shooting on the same fucking day. We're like, damn it.
Yeah. Basically, the chances are that we're gonna.
There's a decent chance that we're dropping on a school shooting.
100%.
Or before or after.
So in science, we're around 23rd. In mathematics, we're around 35.
I don't mean to shit on religion too much, but for the science one, I'm going to blame the evangelicals that don't believe in evolution.
Yeah.
I'm a straight up, like, you're dragging us down, buddy.
You're dragging us down.
Yeah.
Except for a factor. There is one interesting thing. Just to not let the mockery of these, what I like to call hicks. California is 44th in ranking. Alabama, 43rd. So.
Shit.
Yeah.
Does nutting in your sister make you smarter?
Yes. We discovered a secret.
I just hit furniture. I'm sorry.
But no, see, I mean, when we're joking around, we're trying to find cultural, we're trying to find regional, sometimes wink wink genetic reasons for why certain groups of people do better than others.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And we will get to that. But the reality of the situation is that the highest scoring states in the United States among standardized testing are Massachusetts, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, Virginia, New Hampshire, Vermont. And the highest spending states are also...
How are we calculating spending? Not total spending, but like per student, right?
So it's all of the spending costs for teachers, administrators, buildings, maintenance, textbooks, all of that divided by the number of students.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, the biggest spenders in the game right now are New York, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New Jersey. Are we starting to see the...
I think we're starting to see a pattern.
Yeah, we're starting to see a pattern.
Where's
right?
California rank on that? You know?
I'm looking at a map with all the money, and it is... So, for example, New York spends around $24,000 per student. California spends around $13,000. Yeah. So that's little more than half. But here's the thing. In New Hampshire, they spend around $21,000, and in New Hampshire, that dollar goes a lot farther. That $13,000 is actually super disproportionate. When you adjust it for cost of living, they have a map right here. This is on educationdata.org. Yeah. When they adjust it for cost of living, California is basically spending around $9,000 a student. And now...
Jesus Christ.
And now...
So each student's entire education is worth a used Honda?
Basically.
That's
per year.
Lovely.
Per year.
Lovely.
So, for example, to put this into perspective, okay, the average Californian gets around $9,000. It's technically $13,000, but if you adjust it for cost of living, it's around $9,000 on a scale, per student. You have the schools in America that are performing the best, are those schools that are spending the most, and on an international scale, America does barely better or barely below the OCDE average. So this is one force, funding. And now it's time for the second force. Now, when I talk about these two pillars, there are so many problems with education. We have private companies like Pearson and College Board who are parasitically leeching off students. We have charter schools, which are basically also siphoning money out of education. We have people who just believe in defunding education constantly. We have... there's several minor factors. The villainization of public teachers, the attempt to bust unions, which also empowers, disempowers teachers. Mm-hmm. These are all...
Further empowers private companies like Pearson.
Right. So all of these factors are important. But there is a big issue in America, which is this. Study after study, including the Department of Education, has openly conducted the most thorough research on what creates success in America, and has definitively stated that the single most important and predetermining factors to success is the parent's wealth upon birth of the child, the zip code, which is associated with wealth, and reading to that child from ages, 0 to 3 years.
Yeah. Also, you can be tied into wealth.
Of course, it can be tied to wealth, because if you're a single parent working three
jobs to maintain,
you're not going to have time to read your kids.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to read to your children when you have a nanny taking care of them for all the lame shit.
You just pay that for you.
Right. So basically, the conservative argument that, it's just meritocracy, you just need to work hard, is bullshit.
It's a fat load of bullshit.
And as a public school teacher, if I tell my students, all you have to do is work hard and you'll succeed, that's also bullshit.
Yeah, because the broke kid who didn't get read to is still way fucking behind than every other smart kid.
Right. This is a definitive fact. The zip code you live in is the single most determining characteristic for the quality of education you receive. And so we have to now look at why. This is, I'm not talking about the minor stuff like, oh, teachers are too liberal. There's too many gay kids in school. We need to teach that slavery wasn't that bad. I'm not talking about these minor and some honestly ridiculous issues. I am talking about broad, massive, systemic problems. Yes, a few black kids can work their way out of the ghetto because they worked really hard, but that cannot be a national model.
When there's 303 million people, you will find exceptions to
for
any
everything.
rule.
That's not a national model to success.
People big that up and say, look, it's all of them. They take one instance, make it the entire narrative.
Now, so there's some people out there who are legitimately just ignorant, and they like to say, "Oh, you can't live your life with statistics." But when we're actually running a massive country, the only way to assess systemic success is by looking at statistics. There's no other way. This is how we use math and science, which apparently we suck dick at. Yeah. You know, actually no, we don't suck dick at. Sucking dick is a great thing. We suck.
Sucking dick is a skill too.
Yeah, it's a skill.
We're just staring at a dick, going.
We just stare at the dick.
What do I do?
We're teething it.
What do I do?
We're teething the dick.
Yeah, we're the toothy blowjob girl.
Yeah, that's what we are.
Yeah.
So
go back to junior year. Picture your toothy blowjob girlfriend. Ooh. That's our education system.
God, with the braces. Oh Lord.
Sorry, Jessica. Toothy.
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 So, I mean, you're talking about systemic problems here. So it really comes down to, one, we've cut money, specifically in California. Prop 13 has been the biggest cutter of that wealth. And then now it's time to talk about school districts. There could be a debate that we draw school districts in a way in which we try to pack as many... We try to make the super rich neighborhoods be in these super small, isolated districts, and then have the rest of the inner city be in this one giant mega district, which is why you have like New York Public School District is massive, or LA Unified School District is massive, and then all around the rich enclaves of LA, you have these little
tiny little pockets of nice, 2-bedroom gated communities.
Some people will say, "Oh, it's gerrymandered," right? Like the way they do it in politics.
Yeah.
Sure. The way we draw them, they're racist. The way we draw them is classist.
They're 100% racist.
But here's actually a broader argument. What the hell is a district?
Yeah, the very concept of it is insane.
Like, here's something that we discovered when we were researching this stuff.
Which is wild.
We realized, because, I mean, I grew up my whole life here, and we just, districts. I go to, LA.
Yeah, because when you're a kid, you just think like, the district is kind of like, it's just where I'm zoned to go to school.
The city, right?
I live here, I'm going to go to school here because it's near where I live.
Right.
That's how most people think of school districts, and it's not.
A school district I know. It's like a school district is basically a designated zone in basically in America. It's a small designated zone that is legally allowed to collect taxes for a specific bureaucratic reason. Basically, the police, they run with the city. Fire, they run with the city or the county.
So your city taxes go to fund the city police.
And when you're mad at the police, you go to city hall.
Yes.
Right? But with education...
You go to the school board?
The school district, and there's a school board. And
now, is that run by the city?
No.
Fucking why?
It's almost it's almost like they're trying to avoid liability from the democratic process.
Twirls mustache.
Basically, the school district is designed as a mechanism to avoid legal liability for the city.
Yeah.
And to basically isolate its successes and failures, mainly its failures, from the city's accomplishments.
Which creates de facto segregation.
And now we come to that.
Yeah. Fun fact, if you zoom out and take like a parchment paper and trace all the school districts of the United States, California in particular, it says fuck Brown versus Board of Education.
Basically.
Yeah.
It's hilarious how California and basically Los Angeles, this is what I mean by we need to address liberal hypocrisy. We need to address liberal hypocrisy.
It's a prime example of liberal hypocrisy.
Right. When I mean by we need to address liberal hypocrisy, I mean we need to look at the things we talk about, which is we think segregation is bad and a moral, societal failing. And then we have to look at the most segregated places in America, and that is New York City and Los Angeles. This is because the South was forced to desegregate, and if you don't make it illegal in name, but then you draw zones depending on the wealth of certain homes, but then if you're black, you can't buy these wealthy houses or don't have the money to buy these certain houses. Because you can't afford these houses. That's totally okay.
Yeah, because you like your family was a slave for 400 years.
Right. That's okay. That's okay. It's allowed. It's allowed. It's not illegal. And so California, basically, if you drew districts, and like you said with parchment paper, and you looked at income in these districts, you will find huge disparities. So when we say $9,000 when adjusted for cost of living per student, that's actually the average, but there's actually huge standard deviations. There's huge discrepancies. So when you look at suburban schools, you'll find that a student receives about 3 times more funding than a kid who goes to an inner city school. 3 times more funding. Imagine your dick is 3 times larger.
That's unpleasant for someone.
Well, not if you have a 1-inch dick.
That's true.
Right. Or to make this not scary, imagine your dick now. Look between your legs. Now reduce it by a factor of 3.
Oh God, yeah, that's a scarier phrase. Yeah. Don't multiply your dick. Divide it by 3.
Divide it by 3.
Yeah.
Now that's an inner city dick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we're actually talking about dicks literally, and we look at the who goes to inner city schools, that statement isn't true.
No.
But yes, no. Basically, on average in California, suburban school. I mean, in LA, if you go to Redondo Beach Unified School District, the state spends around $35,000 per student, and if you go to LA, it's around $13,000.
So about half.
About half.
Yeah.
If you go to places in basically the Inland Empire, falls even further.
One's got iPads, the other has metal detectors.
Right. And it's not to detect the metal in the iPad.
No.
Yes.
No.
In essence, you have basically 2 forces at work. One, in California, is Prop 13.
Prop 13 gutted the budget.
And then 2 is the fact. We talk about how we draw districts, but I'm actually here to make the argument, and what we discovered in our research is that it doesn't actually matter how you draw the districts. The fact that the districts exist is inherently classist, and it is inherently racist. And here's why. The districts collect most of their money from the state, a little bit comes from the federal government, and a little bit comes from the local property taxes. That little bit is about 33%. Now again, imagine you have 33%, that 33% of your body, imagine it's gone. How functional is your body? So you have certain cities where that local district is raising money through property taxes. So if you live in a rich neighborhood and you're zoned to go to the local school,
which also has less people,
so
you're getting more money per student.
Not only are you getting,
you're also drawing from a way bigger well.
Right. So if you're taxing, because Prop 13 is limiting property taxes, and you're taxing, let's say on average, 3% for all the houses, of their current value with the adjustment of Prop 13, right? $1 million home is going to produce a lot more wealth than a $500,000 home. Yeah. And if you have...
And Section 8 housing is going to produce fucking nothing.
Right. It's going to produce virtually nothing. So you basically have a system in which schools that are surrounded by lower density, higher income housing produce more money for those students, which there are less than on average,
so they get more per
city students who are being funded by first of all, way more kids to divide the money among them, and then of course the value of their home is less. It is straight up feudal. It is a medieval system in which the people who live near the king or near the feudal lord or the closest people to the vassal state are the ones who produce the most money, and then everyone else gets shafted. And so this is how you have the insane suburban versus inner city divide. You cannot fix... this is not a little Band-Aid. There are no Band-Aids to fix this. If we quadrupled or quintupled the property taxes in California right now, if we completely got rid of Prop 13, which we should, or at least there needs to be a major reassessment of what Prop 13 is.
But there's different reasons to do that.
Because it's not just homeowners, by the way. Headquarters, like Apple owns that campus, their first campus.
Apple's a great example.
Right. They bought that place in 1970 or something. Yeah. They're paying basically a 50% increase on a property that's seen 500, 600, 700% increase over the past 50 years in value.
For anyone who has grandparents who live in a 2-story house and the dad worked like a fucking factory job. This is how
This is how you afforded it.
This is how he did it.
Right. And it's basically created a
yeah.
home, basically a landowner versus,
Renter.
Yeah, basically a feudal lord versus peasant class. So we now, are
But
coming.
like you said, if you got rid of Prop 13, amended to do whatever you want to make it good,
It
you're
would
just
not-
increasing the wealth for all the rich kids.
Right.
It doesn't do
fix
anything.
any
It
problem.
does not fix any
So how do we
problems.
fix this?
It actually just exacerbates it in this regard.
Right. So this is the way we fix it. You either can do it on a county level or statewide, but basically all property taxes collected for education are all brought into a single pool within the state, and they are equally distributed per student.
Yeah, so every student gets the same amount of funding,
Yes.
which apparently is a crazy idea.
Apparently, that's socialist. Of course, who opposes this? The people who oppose this
Property owners
are rich people who tend to be property owners.
who tend to be white.
Yes. And here's something else about liberal hypocrisy. We need to talk about this. Not only do they tend to be white, but in California,
Asian.
they also tend to be Asian American.
Yep.
And when I say Asian American, I do not just mean East Asian. I mean Middle Eastern, Desi,
Yep.
Southeast Asian, Pacific Islander, and then, of course, East Asian. And not all Asians are alike. We know that
No,
Koreans...
and by the way, anyone who's Asian will tell you this.
Right.
Ask your Japanese grandparents what they think of Filipinos.
Right.
Ask your Korean grandparents what they think about Japanese people.
Right.
There's so much beef in between these motherfuckers.
Japanese Americans, Korean Americans, and Chinese Americans, on average,
Yeah.
produce actually have higher incomes than whites. But then if you look at Hmong, Burmese, Filipino, Thai, Vietnamese, they do lower. So first of all, the Asian community is not a monolith.
No.
But second of all, if you conglomerate all of them, we find that the biggest opposers to things like affirmative action, things like regulating Prop 13, things like redistributing all of the property taxes into a certain pool is also Asian Americans. And in fact, according to Gallup polling, this is single-handedly the solitary issue that is driving Asian Americans to the right. This is the hill they die on. This is the hill they're willing to die on. So and we have to talk about why Asian Americans do so well in school, because there is a underlying narrative. We've talked about Prop 13 gutting the taxes. We've talked about how districts are drawn in which the wealthier homes produce the most money for the least amount of kids. But now it's also time to talk about why is it that Asian Americans, who are held up as a model minority, held up in the face of black and brown kids and said, just be like them.
Yeah.
Why do Asian Americans do so well? As a Asian, I'm considered white by the census, but Arabs would be in the data that I was presenting with regards to
They would be included.
They would be included in this.
I would be included in that.
And
too.
also, when I mention Arabs, they also have the same immigration pattern,
Yeah.
in which almost all of us were not allowed into the country until the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And who fought for this?
Black and brown people.
They were the ones who died in the street, fighting the historical oppressions of slavery, of basically apartheid, and of course of the horrific immigration policies of the Bracero program and the gasoline bath systems.
They're the ones that kicked open the doors.
And this is the reason why my parents were able to immigrate to America. My parents, and therefore I, would not be living in America if it weren't for the Civil Rights Act.
My grandfather too.
And so, who are these people who from Asia who came to America? Because the people who are here who are black and brown were not disproportionately college educated. They were not disproportionately wealthy in their country of origin. Of course, for black people, they don't even know what their country of origin
No,
is.
they were disproportionately enslaved and indigenous.
Right. And so you have the majority of Asian American immigrants are college educated. They're naturally risk takers because they're the ones who came to America, which is a risky endeavor. They're the ones who came from family wealth, and they're the ones who came to America with their professional degrees. And they swept up a lot of tech jobs and a lot of industrial jobs in the United States. And now they're doing the same thing white people have done, which is they take that wealth, they buy the nice houses, they live in the good neighborhoods, their kids go to these better, well-funded schools, they get to go to the better college, they get the better degree, they make more money, and the cycle continues. So basically, in essence, for several Asian Americans, not all of them, but disproportionately Asian Americans and white people have earned the status of being a member of the white caste, in which because my father and my mother were rich and educated, my children could also be rich and educated, and they get to go to safer schools, and they get to go to get a better education, get a better job, and the cycle continues. This is what the federal government meant.
And we're not saying Asian Americans don't face racism, even when they're on the socioeconomic status, but it is not the fucking same.
It's not the same.
And it is a huge advantage.
And there is a caveat to be had here before we come to an end. There has always been an underlying conversation, which is that Asian Americans do well in school because they work harder. Or the reason black kids don't do well in school is because there is a problem in their character.
Yeah.
This is, first of all, when we actually test students who come from the same economic background, these gaps virtually disappear. And we need to actually have a conversation about what creates degeneracy in culture and how that relates to poverty,
because that's
to racism.
That's essentially the argument that they're making. Oh, it's culture.
Right.
It's not systemic racism. It's not socioeconomic inequality.
And what does that mean?
It's culture.
What does that mean? Either the poverty or the systemic racism corrupted the culture, because when you live in a life of poverty, when the male members of your community are either in jail or brutalized
for walking down the street while black or having an ounce of weed, or not even an ounce, like a fucking gram of weed.
Right. And the only guy who's got money in your life who's a male is
breaking the law.
Is breaking the law.
He's a drug dealer. He's stealing shit. He's pimping something. Like, if you're a kid and everyone around you is poor or in jail, and that's the one dude seeing success, why the fuck would you worry about like what Hawthorne said, or what algebra? Like, I don't need the fucking quadratic formula.
Right.
This guy's making money. I'm gonna go do him. Yeah.
Right.
Because I want to get out of this Section 8.
There is a really racist component in a lot of Uncle Toms, like Thomas Swell or Sowell, I don't know what the fuck his last name is, or the Clarence Thomases or the Candace Owens, who like to perpetuate the white narrative, which is, oh, there is a defect in the black character, which is straight up eugenics. It's straight up like Nazi talking points. This idea of, oh, there are certain races that have skull shapes that when we look at
it's some Leo and Django and Chain shit.
When we look at a level playing field economically, all races perform equally, all sexes perform equally, and that's the data. That's the fact.
Because it goes back to the study you said that your zip code is the single most important factor in your education.
Right. And so we need to talk. When I say we need to talk about liberal hypocrisy, this is it. California is a democratic state. It has one of the most segregated school systems in America. Prop 13, which is a law that is still beloved by homeowners, which is the biggest voting bloc in California. Love this law that has horrifically, by a factor of 50 to 55%, cut the school budget. And then California has redesigned and has basically drawn up and has a school district system in which basically it is inherently racist and inherently classist. And why is it inherent? It's because when it is in America, if something is inherently wealth-based, wealth and race are inextricably linked. And so,
because in America, race is not color. It's like you alluded to before. It's caste, which is not our idea, by the way. It's I forget her name. Hold on, let me look it up. Oh, I got it. Okay, it's Isabel Wilkerson. She basically just stopped looking at race through a lens of color and started looking through a lens of caste.
Right.
In a book called "Caste: The Origins of Our Discontent." I have not read it. It's on my nightstand, but
the synopsis of the book is basically that whiteness now has become basically a ranking caste system, and it's starting to become colorblind, which is making systemic racism difficult to ground.
Yeah.
Especially with the rise of wealth among the Asian American community selectively.
And like an older example is like Italians and Irish immigrants or Polish immigrants were
not considered white,
and now they are,
or Jews.
Yeah. And now we're thinking this is just our theory. With the rise of wealth, Asian Americans as well.
Right. And with just how much we've shamed racism.
With an asterisk, because they still get the
coronavirus is your fault.
Yeah.
You know. In essence, it is this. You cannot be shocked when the United States, which claims to be the greatest country on earth, does so poorly on international tests. You cannot be shocked when in every single state there's rapidly different funding, there's rapidly different curricula, where in every single zip code there's gigantic chasms and disparities in the way we educate. And you cannot be shocked as a liberal and why we have failed to captivate the public eye. That when we are in power, or when we at least control the Democratic Party in California, that we have one of the most defunded, or underfunded and the most inherently unequal, feudal, segregationist system.
Segregated is the word that you should focus on there.
Yes. That's the one that should hurt and insult your liberalism the most.
Yeah.
You know, when you have these systems and apparatuses working together, you cannot be shocked. And there is no Band-Aid solution. There is no Band-Aid solution. The only way to fix this is a complete restructuring of how we fund education at the student level and to up the amount of money we spend per student. It is not just an investment in the future. It is not just an investment in children. It is an investment in the economic viability of the United States. And most importantly, when public education is strong, democracy and civic responsibility is strong. And that's all the time we have. This has been Libtards and Shy with Max and Mansour. Join us again next week for an all-new episode, and please remember to like and subscribe on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Wherever you are and whenever you are, have a good morning, good evening, or good night. What?
Don't wait around till like after the credits. There's nothing weird there.
If you're a white woman and a vegan, fuck you.